Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Too Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Too Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. 2 easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. I'm so excited today. I've got entertainment reporter and author William Keck. So welcome, Will.
Hey, Michael. Sounds so great to hear author after all these years of reporter. So, finally.
That has to be a good feeling. I mean, that's an accomplishment to write a book. Even if nobody read it, it'd be an accomplishment.
It's an accomplishment. You know, we were just speaking before we started officially here about our collections and collecting things.
Right.
One of the things I collected was all of this evidence of my 30 years of reporting. I saved every interview on tape, every single photograph I took with these celebrities, every notebook with all my notes about license plates and hospital room numbers. And it was time to get rid of some things. So I got rid of a bunch and I saved the juiciest stuff for the book.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, there's no reason you couldn't write a sequel.
I have another 20 chapters that are stored away. And, you know, we'll see how this one does. If people want more, there's more sleaze to come.
You know, the part of your career that I've always enjoyed and loved is that you always do the cast reunions. And, you know, I'm a nerdy guy and I love TV, love the cast reunions.
Thank you. That has been my passion. And I write about in the book why that's the case. I was an only child, a sad only child. My father died when I was 5. And so very small family. And I just kind of loved sort of escaping into these TV families, the Bradys and the Ewings of Dallas, the Cartwrights of Bonanza. I kind of dreamed of being a part of that family. And so when I came to LA, I not only wanted to meet them individually, I wanted to meet them together. So anytime there was a reunion produced, I made sure I was there to report on it. And then when I got into a position to organize my own reunions, I went crazy. When I was at a show called Home and Family on the Hallmark channel, we did a Love Boat Christmas reunion and a Knots Landing Christmas, and we did Little House on the Prairie, got them all in a covered wagon. A lot of fun. Those were some happy memories that I share in the book.
I love that. We had Ted on last week, and we've got Fred Grandy's coming next week, and I just love that. You know, that's those were shows that I watched because my parents were watching growing up, and it feels kind of homey to me. You know, it gives that nostalgia feeling to you.
Yeah, just total feel-good entertainment. Nothing edgy. No one dies. I don't think anybody died in the Brady Bunch. And they tried to kill Jan maybe a couple times, but
you know, the only problem any of us have with the Brady Bunch is when they tried to bring in new characters, and we had trouble kind of accepting them into the group.
That's right. That's right. I talked about how I figured if Cousin Oliver could be added to the family, then why couldn't I?
That's right.
So Robert Reed's vacated star or vacated square there on the grid.
What was your first one that you did of those?
Oh, first reunion. Gosh. Well, you know, the first one sort of happened by accident. When I was at Home and Family, we were pitched Marion Ross's new book. We were pitched a new album by Donnie Most and a book by Anson Williams. And I said, instead of booking them separately, let's see if we can just bring them together. So that started things. There was such great energy that I'm like, you know what? Maybe this could work for a 2-hour show. And I think we did Knots Landing next. We did Dynasty with all the Carrington kids.
Amazing.
The Waltons was great. That was a really, really fun one. And people really responded to these.
Yeah, that's because we all love those shows. There's just something kind of wholesome about them, I think, and that's why we all have those great childhood memories of watching those.
Well, and I see your background there. I also did Star Trek: The Next Generation. So
Oh, it's amazing.
yeah, I had 5 of those, and we shot in a very wholesome Leave It to Beaver kind of a house. In fact, it was right below the Leave It to Beaver house on the Universal lot. But for this episode, the Star Trek one, we converted our home into a spaceship with sliding doors, and it was great. We had Jonathan Frakes, and we had who else did we have? We had Marina Sirtis, and we had it was a great grouping, and we had them do little crafts, and
well, and they get along so well as a group. It's great when you get them all together.
They see each other so often too. So I had Brett Spiner couldn't make it, so he zoomed in and he was joking, "Gosh, I haven't seen you guys in forever." Meanwhile, it was last week at a Comic-Con in Jersey.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So you've written a new book. So
yes.
Let me make sure I get the name right. So it's when you step upon a star, Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy. It's a mouthful.
You got it. I know. You got it.
I told you before we go on here, I love the title because it just kind of makes you smile when you read it.
Thank you. Yeah. Once we had the title, the book concept, the cover just kind of came to mind. And yeah, it's my foot stepping on a star. And I came to Hollywood kind of wanting to polish these stars and worship them. But yeah, I ended up stepping on quite a few and stepping in it.
Well, talk about that because your career's been so fascinating. You started out maybe weren't the most liked guy, and then over time you've kind of turned that around and ended up becoming friends with a lot of the people that maybe didn't care for you at the beginning.
Yeah, it's great to get a second chance. I came to LA in my early 20s, and I was kind of rocked when Lucille Ball died. Most people would be like, "Oh, Lucy died. Well, that's sad," and move on. I was just, I don't know. I was sort of just traumatized. I'm like, I got to meet these celebrities before more of them die. And I was going the traditional route. I went to film school and I was going to write scripts. But then there was this opportunity to work for the National Enquirer, and I knew that I'd be able to meet all of them before they died. But the flip side of that is that I was meeting them in their hospital rooms and in their caskets, and
right.
It was pretty rough sometimes, some rough encounters. And yeah, I made a few enemies.
Well, and talk about that, just the lifestyle, because we all kind of grew up with the tabloids and they're so catchy, and you got to check it out and read that, but you never really think about the people that have to get those stories. What was that like, just being out there, and I'm sure you're in a lot of uncomfortable situations just to get those little stories.
Oh, absolutely. I equate it to working for the mafia. Your phone would ring early in the morning, and they'd say you've got to get in a plane and fly to Northern California or fly to Hawaii. The Hawaii story was Adam West, another one of your favorites. I see a Batman back there.
Love Adam. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, great! I get to go to Hawaii and do an Adam West story. Well, the story was to interview his daughter, who was in prison for trying to murder her in-laws.
Oh my gosh.
So there was that kind of thing. I was a big Dallas fan, as I mentioned, and they said, "Great, we want you to fly to Northern California for a Larry Hagman story." Great, what's the story? Well, you're going to find the family of his liver donor.
Oh my gosh. I mean, kind of exciting on one respect, but a little like you're like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, it was exciting, and it did feel like being spy, and you had to be an actor a bit to get your way into these places that were off limits. You would incur the wrath of these people. I remember when I was in Hawaii and I was passing my business card out to certain people who knew Adam West, my phone rang in my hotel room, and it was Adam West. and I thought he was just going to scream at me like I was the Joker. He thanked me. He actually thanked me. He said, "William, I want to thank you for being a good reporter, flying out there to Hawaii and getting the facts right." And he was so smart because he played me, and he played the Enquirer, but he did so in a very respectable way. Yeah. He ended up taking control of the narrative. He supplied photos of him with his grandkids who he was raising as their mother served her sentence. And the headline of the article was "Grandpa Batman to the Rescue."
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, raising his grandkids as their mother finishes her
Well,
sentence. So
he was very savvy with that and kind of understood, that it's going to get out there anyway. You might as well control it a little bit.
absolutely right. Yep. When celebrities, they didn't have to do this, but when celebrities greeted you with some kind of kindness, we were just so amazed by that because everybody just wanted to close the door in our face. When somebody was actually willing to work with us, we worked with them. The problem is that we didn't see the big picture. It was all about that instant gratification. I did a story with Florence Henderson, who played the mom in the
Yeah.
Brady Bunch, and it was a very personal story. I was with her husband, and they were actually hypnotists. She became a hypnotist later in life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she talked about how her fears of flying and intimacy. All she asked, she said, "Please just do me one favor. Do not put my age in the article." And I said, "Absolutely." We agreed to that. My editors agreed. The magazine comes out. On the cover of the issue, the story becomes Brady Mom 61. I can't get enough sex. So her age is on the cover, on the headline, and inside the article. And I was like, "Guys, why did you do this?" They said, "Well, it's public record. She can sue us." Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
this
that
is
would be difficult, especially if you've kind of given your word on something.
I gave my word. I was trying to build relationships, and it was
Yeah.
very difficult to build relationships when they were continuously stabbed in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's which is, kind of the reputation that those type of magazines had at that time, which is part of the reason they sold so well.
Yeah, you're right. It was all about those shocking headlines. And a lot of times, we would investigate a story. We would find out that a couple was moving in together. Well, that became they're engaged, or or we would find out that maybe they're talking about one day having a baby. Well, she's pregnant. They would just take it up to that nth level in order to sell magazines that week. And it wasn't just the Enquirer. I write in my book about how slightly more respected magazines like Life and Style and In Touch Weekly, they would do the same thing. They reported on Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and Jennifer Aniston for a solid year as if they were characters on Days of Our Lives. They're breaking up, they're married, they're pregnant, she loses the baby. It went on forever.
Was there a time or a story that you ever regretted doing?
Oh my gosh, no, I mean, absolutely. Many of them. I mean, when I was sent into the hospital, people's hospital rooms to find out the real reason they died, to talk to the doctors and the
Yeah, it's
nurses.
rough.
I felt disgusting. I really felt horrible about that. And the book is not just revealing what happened, it's also my apology to these people. I do take the
Yeah.
time to say I'm sorry. When in the case of people who are still alive, I reached out to them personally, and some chose to respond with essays in their own words. And in some cases, like Dean Martin, I had crashed his funeral. I couldn't apologize to him, but I reached out to his good friend Rich Little, the
Yeah.
impressionist, and Rich wrote a couple pages in there about the real Dean Martin and why he ended up in the state he did in his final years. So I try to do well by these people as much as I could.
Yeah. I got to meet Rich in Vegas over the winter. He still has a show out there. It's amazing.
He's amazing, and he slipped into voices while I was talking to him. He was talking about Reagan, and he did Reagan, and Sinatra, and he did a little Sinatra. He's incredible talent.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really good. To me, that what you were doing at that time could be a little dangerous. Was it actually dangerous at times?
Oh, absolutely. I was always worried about getting caught. I talk about crashing funerals. Well, one time I actually got caught by security. It was John Candy's funeral. John
Oh,
Candy from
yeah,
SCTV, Uncle
of course.
Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He had passed at age 43, and I snuck into the chapel before all of his famous mourners were coming in for his internment.
Yeah.
And I was pretending to be a mourner at the previous service, and all those people left, and I'm still in the pew, just hoping to wait it out until the John Candy group comes in. And security recognized me. They said, "You got to stop praying," and they escorted me out. And I could see Dan Aykroyd and Rhea Perlman and Danny DeVito looking at me as I I stalled their friend's funeral service. So yes, there's a lot of regrets that I have in this book. If some of the things, if some of the people, if people did what I did to them, I would have punched them in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that, because if you're in the situation, obviously you would be very upset with it. But, just knowing, especially with entertainers, your whole life's in the limelight and everybody wants to know every detail about it. And it's just kind of a difficult situation. If you weren't there, somebody else would have been.
And maybe if someone's being difficult on a movie set, maybe that's something that could be looked into. Maybe finding out some spoilers about what's going to happen on Game of Thrones, but maybe sneaking into someone's funeral crosses the line.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be off limits and allowed to be sacred.
Britney Spears came out talking about having some high-speed chases and reporters chasing her. Were you involved in that?
Absolutely, I was. Yeah,
and you were. Yeah.
This was by accident, though, Michael. I decided, I was at USA Today. I decided to spend a day in the life of a paparazzi. I didn't know where it would lead us. Well, this particular paparazzo had been stalking Britney Spears' house, and I was in the backseat of his car. And yeah, we ended up in a high-speed chase once Britney left her home with her then husband, Kevin Federline. We were going 90 miles per hour, and I mean, she pulled off to get some Cheetos and fill up the followed, and she was barefoot. So yeah, that was horrible. So, but I didn't really have a say in that. I was in the back seat. I couldn't tell him to stop. Another time, I was in a high-speed chase with Elizabeth Taylor, and this time I was behind the wheel, and I told myself, stop, just stop doing this, and I let her go. And I'm glad that I sometimes made the right decision.
That's right. Not always. Right. Well, and I remember, all of the stuff with OJ back in the mid 90s. I remember, my wife at the time, we sat and were glued to the TV just like everybody else. And I know you were one of the first interviews with Nicole's family after that happened.
Yeah, I was the first interview, and it's hard to be proud of something like this. I mean, I guess I'm proud that I didn't cave into fear. Yeah. Well, the story was, yes, Nicole Brown Simpson had been laid to rest. 3 days later, my editor said, we want you to get the first interview with her family. So that meant driving down about an hour south and trying to sneak into their gated community. And I tried flower deliveries and I tried grocery deliveries. I was turned away. So I ended up driving a little bit further down to a Ritz-Carlton. The gated community where Nicole's family lived was on the same beach as the Ritz-Carlton. So I walked on the beach in my suit and tie. I jumped a fence and I worked my way up to the house and rang the doorbell.
How did that go? What was the reception to that?
Well, the housekeeper answered the door, and I said, I'm here to see Mrs. Brown. And I was led into the home, and there was Nicole's mother and her 3 sisters sitting around a photo of Nicole crying. And Mrs. Brown took my hand and said, thank you so much for coming. How did you know my daughter?
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you answer that?
Honestly, I answered honestly, and I said, I'm so sorry for this horrible invasion of your privacy and what you've had to go through. But I'm with the Enquirer. And what do you want? And I said, well, I guess I'd like to find out how you told the children about their mother. And there had been so much attention on OJ that I think the family was really looking for a chance to be able to tell people about Nicole, about the victim. And I just happened to be the first person that they spoke with. And she gave me a lovely story about how mommy was in heaven and the children were going to have 4 mommies now looking out for them. The story came out. They appreciated the accuracy of it, and it established a relationship between the Enquirer and the Browns that lasted for many years.
Were you, like most of us were, a lot of us loved OJ at that time. Were you shocked by that? Did the whole situation kind of surprise you?
Well, I wasn't a big football fan, but yeah, I mean, everybody loved OJ. He was just this all-American hero. And
when he was a funny actor.
The Naked Gun movies. I mean, he was hysterical in those. Yeah, it was horrible. It's horrible when you find out that your idols are murderers.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt. I never had any doubts that he did that. And it's just so strange that his death coincides with the 30th anniversary of that happening and the publication of my book. It's all sort of
I think
strange.
life just kind of works that way. It's all about the connections and how things tie together, and it just seems to work out that way a lot of times.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But at least I know OJ is not going to come after me. Others might, but there's one I don't have to worry about.
What at what point did you decide you were going to kind of change that career trajectory? Was there that moment that you said, okay, I need to change kind of how I'm operating, or was it just kind of something that happened over time?
Well, it always felt sort of icky, and I knew
Yeah.
that 3 years would be it. I wanted to give myself 3 years where I was afraid I'd become a lifer at that point. So at the end of 3 years, I was just getting kind of antsy. I was trying to do more on the record interviews with celebrities with their cooperation. But it was a photo of Raquel Welch,
Oh,
the great sex symbol Raquel Welch,
yeah,
that was
love
taken of her
Raquel. Yeah.
looking very sad and despondent. They ran that image of her on the cover along with the photo of her in her glory glamour years. And the headline was something like the sad, lonely days of Raquel Welch. And I saw myself in that image. We've all had those days where
Sure.
things aren't going well, where we feel sad, depressed, and I couldn't make a living anymore based on the suffering of others. And I tried to work out a deal where I would stay and just do positive stories. They said I could for half my salary, so I knew it was time to reboot my life.
Well, and that's very commendable how you did that. Now you're very respected reporter, and the some of the interviews, the things you have done, those are some of my favorite interviews now. So congratulations on that. I told you I love the cast reunions and stuff. But the reason I loved them is because you were so good, and I've tried to steal a little bit of that with the podcast, because I've done a lot of panel interviews. Those are very difficult to make sure that everybody gets their moment, and I always thought you were really good at that.
Wow, thank you very much. I wonder if we were at Comic-Con ever at the same time.
It's very possible.
San Diego, yeah.
We go to a lot of them.
Well, let's see. I mean, I moderated several panels with the cast of Castle
Oh yeah,
and
love Castle.
Bones, Once Upon a Time. Those were all in San
Yeah.
Diego Comic Con. I did the Desperate Housewives, and I did the cast of Dallas, and yeah, it goes on and on. It's challenging though to make sure everybody gets recognized.
Yeah, yeah. I just did one with the cast from Resident Alien, and it was amazing. But there was 10 of them, and it's
Oh
just
wow.
we were on for about an hour, but you have to be aware of when you're losing somebody because they haven't had that opportunity to speak, and you got to make sure to kind of direct things to them. And the cast a lot of times will help you with that because they're so familiar with each other. And if they realize somebody hadn't said something in a while, they'll kind of call on somebody themselves. But I always thought you did a really good job of giving everybody their moment. I just wanted
Well,
to bring
thank you. And I mean, another challenge is when you have the star of the show who just wants to answer all the questions.
yeah.
I found even when I look at the end of the line and I'm like, hey, Emily down there, so we want to bring you into the conversation. So what do you think is going to happen in next season? And then the star jumps in again and takes the question, and you see some of them rolling their eyes. So a lot of different personalities all together. It's really like it's like making the perfect recipe, with all different
That's right.
ingredients that don't always go so well together.
Well, that's actually a really good analogy because, with recipes, a little bit might be the perfect, compliment. But if you put just a little bit more, it could mess up the recipe.
Yeah, leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and we don't want that to happen on a panel,
You had
especially
a
not in
connection
Hollywood.
with Desperate Housewives. Talk about that a little bit.
I growing up, I loved those primetime soaps like Dallas and Dynasty and Knots Landing, and there hadn't been a show like that in a while until Desperate Housewives. So yeah, I was really interested in that show, and I was on set all the time. Luckily, they trusted me to come on and speak with the cast. They got to know me. I did interviews in Terry Hatcher's home and Marcia Cross's home and Eva Longoria's home, and for the most part, they really went very well. And I kept the secrets as long as I could.
Right.
I I was the only reporter on the set for the filming the final episode,
Oh,
and
wow.
things had gotten kind of toxic by then. I was aware, but I don't know. I guess I just felt with the show ending that it was time to really say things as it was. And the four main women would be filming a scene, and the director would yell "cut," and then Terry would go off by herself, and then Eva, Marcia, and Felicity would go off in the other direction. They hadn't been speaking in some time, and I just chose to call it as it was. And I know that was a little, it ruffled some feathers. Others appreciated me telling it how it was. Uh, a lot of times stories are just kind of made up about how cheery everything is,
Right.
and they can get frustrated by that, this false narrative that's told.
Yeah.
So I've told the truth and I've suffered the consequences sometimes.
Well, as a fan, we want to hear that the cast are getting along because we're fans of them, as a cast. But if the alternative is that they're really not getting along, that's pretty interesting too.
Well, I mean, for instance, Lost.
Yes,
A big fan. I'm guessing you were a fan of Lost. Did
of
you watch
course.
Lost?
Yeah, love Lost.
So, would you open the envelope that talks about how the cast gets along so well, or would you open up the envelope that says who didn't like who?
Yeah, I'd go with the negative, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we're curious. And it's like TV shows. There's that we're attracted to the drama, to the excitement. And so yeah, a lot of people want to know what was really happening on these sets. And I covered up most secrets. I mean, a lot of stuff that one of the Lost creators, Carlton Hughes, he writes
Yeah.
an essay in my book about how he was able to trust me with the show secrets. And I would find out things and they would say, please don't write that. It's going to spoil things. And of course, I honored those requests. And a lot of times we were able to kind of play exchange. You give me something, I give you something. The goods and services exchange.
How do you balance that? Because on the one hand, the secrets are probably the best story. But on the other hand, if you use that, you may never get that access again.
Well, that's the deal. I talked about how the Enquirer never saw the big picture. It was about the immediate hit, the sales of that week's issue. I did see the bigger picture. And I knew that, yeah, I get a lot of excitement from this story this week, but in the long run, it could cost me access to a lot of other stories. You got
Yeah.
to pick and choose your battles. I in fact have a lot of lessons learned in my book. Every chapter ends with a lesson learned. And one of the big lessons that I was taught by my editor at the Enquirer was choose your battles.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. You got to kind of read the room, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. What's
You want to
the
be,
what kind of feedback have you been getting on the book?
it's been great. I don't think people have expected to be what it is. I think people thought it was going to be another version of the Enquirer, a tell-all.
Right.
And it's not that. It's not that. My time of exposing celebrity secrets is over. This is about how I got those secrets and exposed what I did to get the story, the crazy things I did, hiding in trees at funerals, stealing people's garbage and going through it, copying down license plates, running those plates to find out who was going to whose house. So the tricks of the trade, but also it's an apology. Like I mentioned, I reach out to people whenever I can. A lot of them chose to write their version of things. So I do feel in a way it's kind of cleansing my karma.
I like that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good way to think about it. And I think everybody deserves kind of a second chance. If you never give anybody a second chance, how are any of us going to improve? Because we've always, all of us have done those things that maybe we're not super proud of, but it kind of led to where we are today. So maybe they were important too. I mean, it's just kind of a difficult situation. And I like the fact that you're just being honest and telling the story.
Hopefully we learn from our mistakes, or we don't. I think I did. And it shaped me into a more authentic, better man.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite encounter or favorite interview?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many interesting ones in here. I mean, one of the stories I talked about was another interview that I sort of crossed the line. But I had to sit down with the Charlie's Angels, the new 20 years ago Charlie's Angels. It's another Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu. And at the time, I was up for a staff position at USA Today, and I was trying to prove that I was fearless, and I could ask any question. I wasn't going to hold back. And these three women came in to play with me. They were very playful and fun. And I chose to just kind of dig like it was some kind of political interview. And I asked all the questions we're not supposed to ask that were told as kids, never ask about their salaries. For instance, Cameron Diaz had made 20 million on the picture. Drew Barrymore, I think, made 11 million, and Lucy Liu made 2 million. And I brought those figures up in the interview to get their reaction. And I got a reaction.
A big disparity between the salary.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, Cameron Diaz was one of the top.
Oh, she was huge at that time.
Talents at the time. Lucy Liu was transitioning from TV to film. She was, I mean, 2 million's more than I ever made. So very good for her. So for me to call that out, I thought was a real cheap shot. I also brought up Drew Barrymore's ex-husband, who was in the first movie, but not in the second movie. And what I did see is that they were standing up for each other. They were protecting each other. And I did write about that in the book. But yeah, I would certainly go back and make changes if I could. But I did learn. I learned from these.
Well, yeah, and that's I'm sure it helped make you the interviewer you are today, because you kind of learn, what's too much, how much is too far, when's the right time to ask certain questions. You have, like we said before, you got to read the room sometimes.
Well, also, Michael, at the time, my tabloid years, I was keeping secrets about myself. I was in the closet, so here I was exposing other people's private lives, and I was lying about my own life. So when I came clean about myself, I just decided to clean up my life all around, and I'm a happier person. And I find that it sounds a little cheesy, but when you're a happier person, you just want to make the others around you happier. And I think because I was in a darker place, I was just kind of caught up in the darkness a little bit, playing that bad boy. Yeah, so I was an unhappy bad boy, and now I'm a happy good boy.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Did you ever worry that somebody might investigate you and expose things you didn't want exposed at the time?
It's a really good question. I mean, one person punched me in the face, so I write about that in the book. It's a mystery celebrity I'm not allowed to name. You can maybe pick it up based on the clues I offer. But yeah, I always thought, when Princess Diana passed away,
yeah,
and George Clooney was leading this charge among Hollywood to stop the paparazzi in their tracks, I thought it would be very interesting if they had hired some investigators to go after some of the editors of the different magazines, the producer TMZ, because I know I had my secrets and they all had their secrets that they would have been horrified to have exposed. They would have lost their jobs. I guess George Clooney's a little classier than that. it certainly would have been interesting, but we have seen in recent years, after the Me Too movement, we've seen some people exposed for their bad ways. I think of Ellen DeGeneres.
Right.
Ellen had this image of being this happy, wonderful, feel-good host, and it turned out that she was anything but behind the scenes. We all had heard the stories about her for years, so we weren't surprised. We were surprised it took so long for those stories to come out. And I
really did. I think a lot of us were kind of shocked when it finally kind of came out.
Yeah, and it ended up killing her show. It ended a year early. So
yeah.
I had my own little interaction with Ellen that I write about in the book, and actually she comes off way better than I do. But I was at the People's Choice Awards, and I was backstage interviewing Portia de Rossi and Ellen. They were married at the time, about the gifts they'd exchanged for Christmas, very expensive cars. I'm sure that's what you and your wife exchanged, right? Yeah, Lamborghinis and such. So it was nice, and all of a sudden Ellen starts sort of petting my tuxedo collar, and it was a fur collar, and she's a staunch animal activist. I appreciate that tremendously. I'm an animal lover myself. In a moment of weakness, I was in a Melrose boutique, and there was a tuxedo with a real collar on sale, and I bought it. And this is the first time I wore it, and the last time I wore it. Ellen said, "Is this real?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And she said, "Wow." She said, "I like you, but I don't like you anymore." Yeah. And I understood that. And she softened, and she called me back and answered some more questions. But yeah, no, I need to bury that jacket. I think it may still be breathing around here in some closet. I've got to track it down and give it a proper service.
Talk about wrestling a bear.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I did. So in addition to doing these stunts and trying to find out stories about celebrities, they would have us do like actual physical stunts. A day, a reporter becomes an old man for a day. I did that to see what it was like, what ageism was like, if I could get into the movies for a discount, if I could go in a hot club in my 80s. Hollywood makeup people transform me. But yeah, they had me wrestle an 800-pound bear. And I have those photos in the book. And, I mentioned that there was that one sitcom star who I couldn't name. So in that chapter, instead of showing photos of me with that celebrity, I put in photos of me being attacked by the bear instead. And I could name him. Bogey the bear was my attacker.
Well, and you landed on the suppression list with the Scientologist. How did that come about?
I did. So Kirstie Alley, the late great Kirstie Alley, I was a fan of hers. I was all set to interview her for her show Fat Actress on Showtime several years ago. And I was going to go to her home. I was very excited. And then just a couple days before the interview, her manager said, "I'm sorry, Will, you can't interview Kirstie. You're on the Scientologist suppressive list." And I'm like, I don't know that I've ever met a Scientologist. I've never met Kirstie before. And I said, there has to have been some mistake. Well, as it turned out, I had done a red carpet interview with Kelsey Grammer. And I was asking Kelsey, I said, you've had all these Cheers stars on. You had on Ted Danson and Shelley Long and Rhea Perlman and George Wendt, John Ratzenberger. Why haven't you had Kirstie Alley? And he said, well, we asked. Kirstie won't do the show because I play a psychiatrist and she's a Scientologist, and the Scientologists are opposed to psychiatry. So I was like, oh, wow. So at that time, this was for Entertainment Weekly, I reached out to Kirstie and I said, Kirstie, do you want to comment about this? And her comment on the record was, the only way I would ever do Frasier is if I could do Frasier. And it was her words, it was her humor. We thought it was great.
That sounds exactly like how most of us picture her.
Oh my God, absolutely. She was a hoot. But I guess the Scientologists didn't appreciate me calling attention to one of their policies. I don't know what it was, but yeah, I was on the list. So I did end up getting back into Kirstie's graces, and I interviewed her later in life. So yeah, but you don't want to be on that list. No.
Well, I'm glad I asked that because I just rewatched Cheers and Frasier, getting ready for the new, Frasier coming back. And that was the thought I had the whole time. Where was Kirstie?
Right. Yeah. Now we know. They all did it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Will, thank you for taking some time with us today. I think the book looks amazing. It is something I think is going to do really well for you. And I will be shocked if you don't end up writing a second book.
Well, I chose for this book to do all the stories that were kind of action oriented. I was thinking maybe someone might want to adapt it for a movie one day. And so it is me on the run. It's me hiding. It's me stealing garbage, like I said, sneaking into places I'm not supposed to be at. So there are lots of other stories that are tucked away when I said the wrong thing. And it's sort of it reveals who was nice and who wasn't. So we'll see. For now, that's in the
what I would love to see if you get to make this into a movie? I would love to see you play one of the stars that somebody is stalking.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Well,
kind of reverse the role. I'm sure you'll have somebody playing a young you, so maybe you could play somebody that they're, crashing.
Who could I? Maybe I can play Nicole Kidman. I just got some talks here. I'll get a few more injections. I'll shave the beard, dye my hair red. I love it. When
does the book come out, Will?
Well, the book is out July 11th, 7/11.
Right around the corner.
7/11, the publication date, and BarnesandNoble.com. It was available for pre-order there, and of course, it's available on Kindle and Apple Books and in hardcover and softcover. Lots of ways to get the book. And I think actually, since you're a Star Trek fan, you may be familiar with Jacobs Brown Media. They've published a lot of Star Trek books, and they were the publisher of my book. So you can also get it on Jacobs Brown, their website. In all forms.
Terrific. Yeah, we've had Michael Jan Friedman had come on at one time, and he'd written some stuff with them. And yeah, that's kind of how I was introduced to it.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, I really enjoyed speaking with you, and hopefully people won't hate me. Hopefully we'll give the book a chance and see that a leopard can change his spots, in the words of Julie Newmar.
That's right. That's right. Well, and you have to, when it becomes a movie, you have to come back and talk about that.
I would love to, and maybe we can have you play Woody Harrelson.
Oh my gosh.
You can play a Woody
Yes.
Harrelson. Yeah, yeah. Or a Bruce Willis. You could do a Bruce Willis and threaten to burn down my house, as Bruce did.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's what, there's so many good stories in there. And, you know, we're all kind of suffering with Bruce right now, that he's having so much trouble, but I love the way that he's handling it. You know, he's being kind of open with it. And I'm not so sure that he'd have done that earlier on in his career.
Well, I mean, I don't know that he's able to make all those decisions now. I think it's his family, Demi Moore and his current wife, and the children who are making those decisions for him. But yeah, I think that they're handling it with grace. I never understood why you would hide certain people when they got to be older.
Yeah.
I remember Dick Clark, Dick Clark, who used to host the Rockin' New Year's Eve and American Bandstand, and he had a stroke, and he appeared on American Bandstand not long before his death, and people were like, "Oh gosh, I don't want to see that part of him." Well, I say, you know what? How brave of him to come out when he's struggling. He still wants to be there. He still has a love for the medium and for the public, for his fans. So yeah, hiding, I don't think accomplishes anything. It didn't work for me. And I applaud Bruce Willis for being out there and sharing his struggle with us. It's inspiring.
It really is. It really is. So the book is When You Step Upon a Star: Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy. Love the title.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will, for coming on. Before you go, where can we find out more about you on social media?
The name When You Step Upon a Star is everything. So whenyoustepUponAstar.com, When You Step Upon a Star on Facebook, Step Upon a Star on Twitter, and I did just launch my When You Step Upon a Star Instagram page, and I really could use some followers on that. It's brand new. So if you want to become one of my first followers, sign on to Instagram and find whenyoustepUponAstar.com. And I'm putting up some exclusive photos of celebrities holding my book that I've been gifting to them. So there's some fun extras you can find on there.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much, Will. And please do, anytime, come back.
So fun. You got it. Just name the time. We'll do it.
Awesome. Okay, hold on one second. Hope you enjoyed that. William Keck, When You Step Upon a Star: Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy, comes out July the 11th. Make sure you get your copy. The excerpts that I've read, excellent. And he's got a great chapter on Star Trek. So make sure, if you're a Trekkie or a Trekker, make sure you check that out. I think it's really commendable, the change he's made in his career, and the apologies that he's making out there now. Unbelievable stories that he has. So I hope you'll check that out. Thank you so much for joining us. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. If you go there, please subscribe. Really helps us out. It's free. Website is meistercon.com. You can find all 800 plus episodes of our show, audio and video versions, meistercon.com. Thank you guys so much. Till next time. Bye, everybody.